Hello there, once again, very quickly, back-to-back videos being recorded today from a casual type setting, and so multiple crossover minutes for you. This is Justin, and I have another just brief thought to share with you. In the book of 1 Samuel in the Bible, there's a popular story recorded about a little shepherd boy that got called up and out into the front lines of a very tumultuous situation where the army of the Philistines were taunting, tormenting, and threatening Israel at the time. At the time when giants were in the land, and there was a particular giant Goliath that was in the army of the Philistines, and he particularly was making several different types of taunts and threats and challenging the armies of Israel, if anyone could stand to him or any group of people, and everyone was afraid of him, and they didn't really know what to do, and they felt like they really had no hope left. Somehow or another, David, the youngest of his brothers, who had never been in the military before but had tended sheep, albeit protecting them from wild animals on multiple occasions, somehow he found himself in a situation where he heard of what was going on and just had some type of courage or boldness to say, well, I'm going to stand. Somebody has to. Is there not a cause here? I mean, what are we doing cowering, to those who are defying God himself, you know? So he one thing led to another, took a slingshot, had 5 stones, only took one. Some say the 5 stones were because he also had 4 brothers in case they all were going to come against him as well. Others say other things about that. The armor that they had, the military armor, equipment didn't even fit him. It was real big and clunky on him because he was just a small boy, so he went out there without any battle armor. Then when Goliath fell, he cut off his head, and there was a parade, and there was a celebration, and so forth and so on. Well, so David and Goliath. But there's a lesser known story before that, one that we don't ever really talk about necessarily, or at least in this way, and that is the story of Saul and Goliath. Now, see, before David ever got word about what was going on and had his opportunity, Saul, the king, was being confronted, his army was being confronted, and Saul had the opportunity in all of his glory and kingship to stand, or to have the right people to stand in his with him and on his behalf. And he had a different attitude and posture. He was afraid, he was terrified, he was intimidated, and the thing that we're seeing here is that he was so gripped with fear that at a certain point he was willing to put the entire kingdom and its welfare and its future existence into the hands of a young boy, of a shepherd who played a harp out on the fields and sang songs to God. I mean, there's multiple things we can pull for this, but the one thing I just want to just say is that this situation brings out the condition and relationship of the heart of each Saul and David with God, and with respect to who he is, knowing him, really knowing him, and not just being a religious ceremonial follower, or one who on the outside says that they align with God, but differentiating what it is to truly know Him. And on some level, because of that, experiencing Him. Saul had so much more at his disposal. He had an entire army. He had grown men. They had weapons. They had strength. They had armor. They had all these different things. And David did not. He had just his own boy self on the outside. And Saul, looking upon the outside only, couldn't even fathom how they had a chance against the Philistines. But the point is that if the Philistines' army was truly that much stronger or superior, that Saul did not know his God, did not know the God of Israel, did not know that God is the true defender of Israel. And especially when Israel is particularly seeking God, or to operate in righteousness, or to be obedient, or in a good standing with God, because He is not just blindly allow Israel to do whatever they wanted without consequence, because when they disobey God, when they sin, when they turn to other idols and this and that, they open the door to be to have consequence, and bad consequence sometimes. And that's, he is not just blindly favoring Israel just for the sake of of allowing them to do whatever they want. He called them to obedience. He called them to doing well and right in His sight and by the people. And so Saul could have had the same approach to Goliath as David did, with respect to seeing that Goliath was not just coming against a natural army. He was defying what God had called and what God had established, and what God, and even who God was. He was blaspheming God in some ways directly. And so the fact that Saul did not recognize that he could walk with God and approach this defiance with God, and so that it could be handled rightly, his heart is exposed. And without God, without knowing how He really is, and developing and cultivating personal time with Him like David did, then in the time when there was a crisis or a need, he was empty inside. He was devoid. Now, that doesn't mean we don't feel fear when a challenge or a crazy situation beyond our control or beyond our ability, natural ability, comes up. That doesn't mean that means we don't have a relationship. But the fact that there wasn't anything within him that, as indicated at least in Scripture, that was willing to say, now wait a second, I don't know how this is going to work out or whatever, but this guy is defying God. This guy is blaspheming. This guy is we have to at least seek God's heart. Because I know surely God has a plan. We can't. But Saul, there's not clear evidence in the Scriptures that Saul really sought God's heart and took time to see how he could cooperate with God and obey or follow or get his direction on what to do with this person and with this army. So David and Goliath, yeah, I understand that one. At least I understand it more, I've heard it more. But Saul and Goliath, I just challenge you to take that in consideration, because there, from time to time throughout our lives, there will be someone and Goliath, an unwritten story, not recorded in the Bible, but yet written on the tablets of life and history in our contemporary settings, whether it be the things that we go through, There's going to be times when we are faced with things that are overwhelming, and it will feel like, on some level, some parallel, it will feel like some type of Goliath. Not every challenge is a perfect match or a very parallel match to this setting. Yes, there's different circumstances in this situation than some of the challenges that we face. But the fact is that there will be things that are bigger than ourselves, that we will need to not just call upon God, but cultivate, including in the good times, in the peaceful times, or in the times when these things are happening. Cultivate that time with God, that relationship, that deepening of our heart, of our faith, of our trust, of our worship, of our adoration and surrender to God. To know Him, to really know Him, which opens the door to really experiencing His grace, His peace, His strength in our spirit, and in different ways at times outwardly in our life. So that when those times come, we have grooved deeper patterns in our heart of trust and going to Him, running to Him, and connecting with Him, and operating with Him, and walking with Him in and through the challenges of our life. So may you be blessed with that grace, with that insight, and that passion to know God more for as He truly is, for who He is, and to adore Him, to worship Him for the sake that He is God alone. And then we'll see the next story of someone in Goliath.